Charlotte Hayes is senior editor of the Independent Women's Forum. To take everything back later in the week, but whatever, you got to think he did nothing for his country's reputation. Charlotte Hayes, let's start with the White House and Iran, however.
Well, look, President Bush is getting a lot of flack for bullying Iran, which is just simply meddling in Iraq.
Or saber-rattling anyway.
No, but he's doing the right thing. I think the people who criticize him are people who not only don't want him to speak tough, want him to speak softly and not carry any kind of big stick. I think he's doing the right thing. He's moved an aircraft carrier into the region. That is a prudent act and not a provocative.
Conservatives, but also liberals at home. In fact, the regime in Iran, weaker than it's ever been in the past 2 years. This is the moment to step up the pressure, not back down.
And this is one, this is one country that will be affected by an embargo, even if you can't really enforce it.
Victoria.
Well, the thing is, it depends on the kind of pressure. The kind of pressure that
our president think, hey, a few nukes in Iran, no big deal, or would you rather him take the position of turning up the pressure on them?
Nobody cares what the French think.
Fair point. Well, if we don't want to fight with Iran, but we do want to put some pressure on them to stop meddling in Iraq, how do we do it?
We're not going to fight with them. And what we have to do is kill their soldiers on the ground. And,
can you kill the soldiers on the ground without it escalating into an actual war? See, if they killed our soldiers on the ground, we're going to have a fight.
They are killing our soldiers on the ground.
Which is why we may have a fight, Ron.
No, the one thing we cannot do is negotiate unless we think we will get something. If we could get from Ahmadinejad what, comparable to what Chirac said, if he said, hey, Israel has a little bitty right to exist, then there would be a reason to negotiate.
We need Iran in Iraq. And I think the way prudently to get there really is to negotiate with them.
What are they going to give us?
What are they going to give us? I hope
we're going to give them
if the United Nations comes in to this equation, and I think we've asked them to come into this equation, is some sort of deal with respect to the nuclear enrichment. And I think that's the thing that they're going to get. But we can't get there by saying that we refuse to negotiate with you before the fact.
I think we won't know what they're going to give us unless we talk to them.
I think we do know, Victoria.
We don't know because we won't talk to them.
What do you think?
Let's talk presidential politics here just for a moment.
He's probably taken himself out of this already.
You think it's that bad? You think it's completely damning for him?
I think it's gone.
All right.
I think they'll give him a pass. He's an articulate, clean man, after all. But I think what it does, well, I hope he stays in because it's fun. I also think that it's too bad that what he said about Hillary didn't get a little bit of attention. I can see that this is more fun. But he said what a disaster her cap policy is, and that should have gotten some attention, too. I can see why
he killed the attention by his other comments.
That's what he's going to do all along. He's a fun candidate.
Well, that would be the question. Joe Biden, look, this is a man who has talked.
He's got a big mouth.
This is a guy who's talked a lot for a long time. I mean, and people have told him, look, you need to quiet down. He doesn't seem to be able to do it. He killed his last presidential campaign saying the wrong things.
People always say that the...
Right, exactly. And that's why it's bad. It's not that it's not a compliment. It's just an underhanded compliment. Go ahead.
Well, but the other thing you mean is that they're intelligent. And this is sort of a subterranean way of saying, well, this guy's really intelligent. The rest of these people were not. And I think that's really where I think African-Americans...
It's like Larry David in the HBO sitcom Curb Your Enthusiasm. He thinks that he's doing the right thing, and it always comes back to haunt him in the end. Here he is thinking that he's complimenting Barack Obama, the biggest political
So he's got a political 10 years.
The real story, as Charlotte points out, is his critiques of not only Hillary Clinton, but also John Edwards' policy on Iraq. We're going to see more of that in the debates. The debate on Iraq among the Democrats is not as uniform as we've been led to believe.
I think it's interesting that it's the liberals who've been making these horrible race gaffes lately. And I also think that Biden is not a serious candidate. He's too conservative to get nominated.
I think also Biden took the first opening salvo of this campaign of the various candidates taking shots at each other. Until then, it had been a love fest. Nobody had really attacked each other. Now they've started, and I think we're going to expect to see some more attacks.
Well, I'm glad you said lately, because, there's Trot, there's Macaca, and all the rest of it on the Republican side.
Campaign.
Well, this
campaign,
Macaca.
yes, it's true. Well, this was his Macaca. But I think that what you really have to ask yourself is somebody with 30 years in the Senate, whether or not he hadn't by this time built up the sophistication.
Democratic side?
So, and this is a fact. Hillary is going to be the establishment candidate. She wants to be the inevitable candidate, but that's not the way that the Democratic Party works. There's going to be a dean. We don't know who it is, but he'll blow right in and take all the attention.
Surprise, I'm not for Hillary, but I say if she can raise the money, more power to her, because that's freedom of speech.
All right, we got to move on, folks, but when we return, elections have consequences. It's a harsh lesson for the White House, courtesy of the U.S. Senate. This is Eye on Washington.
The massive message that a second co-equal branch of government thinks that what the administration's doing sucks. I mean, it's huge.
Well, it sends a message not just to the American people, it sends a message to our enemies. You know, this week has been a grim week. You watched all of these senators posturing over something that is non-binding. You watched Hagel saying, you know, if you want a safe job, go be a shoe salesman. I think shoe salesmen are more heroic than these guys posturing over something that means nothing.
Well, it does mean something.
Wait a second, everyone. This past week, we also saw this national intelligence estimate come out, which basically seemed to say things are going just as badly in Iraq as you might imagine, and the chances of success are very slim.
Which everyone agrees. David Petraeus, our new commander on the ground in Iraq, told the Senate Armed Services Committee last week, things are dire, but it can be saved. And how is the best way to do it? Our commander on the ground in Iraq, send more reinforcements.
No, that's not what the
National
Intelligence Estimate is saying, that the way that you can save it is if the Iraqi leaders step up to the plate, and it also makes it very clear that they're not too optimistic that the Iraqi leaders will step up to the plate. Nobody's optimistic about that. And the other thing about this idea that the resolution sends a message to our enemies, you know, the message that it sends to our enemies is that we have co-equal branches of government and they don't have to agree with each other. We're not some kind of totalitarian regime. We don't all march in lockstep.
If you really believe it's hopeless, cut the funding. McCain said that. He doesn't believe it's hopeless. He's offered a resolution that's much better. It has some silly benchmarks, as if you can have a benchmark in war, but it's not defeatist.
But what would he say about the ratcheting up of casualties and the military operations and the counterinsurgency this week? I think that really what we have is a policy that passes sort of wishful thinking kind of policy on all sides. And I think that's what the Senate is trying to rein in with this resolution.
The Senate is doing words. These resolutions mean nothing. If they want to do something and rein something in, cut off the funding. I hope they won't. It would be defeat.
And I think they're building the pretext to do precisely that.
I hope not.
We'll watch it unfold over the next few months. We have to move on. But when we come back, so global warming is real. What now? This is Eye on Washington. Victoria Jones?
He was clearly deciding something else, I think. At this point, we're about the only country in the world that is still trying to decide if this thing is real. Everybody else has decided it's real and is trying to decide what to do about it. We're trying to decide if it's fiction or fact. I don't know where he is. Apparently, this is a left-right issue rather than being a scientific issue.
The big news of the last 2 weeks was actually that George W. Bush has changed his mind once again. And in his State of the Union, even though it was a phrase, even though he went by it in 5 seconds, he did say that global climate change is a pressing problem. I also have to say about this report, the scientists conclude, in fact, that global warming is happening, which I don't think many people dispute. But then they also say that it's very likely that mankind plays a role. Even there, the uncertainty, you don't have a certainty about the causes of it, and there's no certainty about the solutions.
No, they're more certain than that. For the first time,
that's what they say, very likely.
That human beings are playing a role in this. Now, what's interesting to me about the State of the Union is that a week before that, you had 10 top-rated corporate executives come into this town and say, look, what we would like is emission controls, something called cap and trade, so that the administration can really get a handle on this. What did the president do? He said, well, let's do technology. Let's do something light. So I think the administration really hasn't got it yet.
The climate has changed for millions of years before we were on this earth. I feel very sorry for the polar bears, but we don't know how much of it is our fault.
By the time we absolutely know, isn't it going to be too late to do anything about it?
Al Gore, of course, who still hasn't declared he's running for president, but who would be a formidable candidate
the Nobel nominee
Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He likes to compare it, global warming, to Reconstruction in Iraq. He says, you know, everybody did research. We had planning about how things might be after we invaded Iraq, but no one paid any attention. He says something similar is happening with global warming. I think it's a fair point.
Well, you know, we used to be afraid of global cooling, so take your choice.
Oh, so you're not buying it, Charlotte. You're still you're in the denier stage.
I'm not a denier. I have an open mind. I'm waiting for more evidence. I'm waiting for something more than likely.
Wait a minute. This week we also had the French, who are just making all kinds of trouble for everyone, basically demand that the United States sign the Kyoto Treaty, I guess to show that we're getting serious about this. Is that likely to happen, and should it happen?
But you know who was on